I have a mysterious bond with an elderly gentleman whose identity was unknown to me or anyone else for that matter. The first time I had met this grandpa was 7 years ago when I was in 7th grade. I lived in Gapyeong County throughout my entire elementary school years. Then after I graduated, my parents moved us to the city of Guri. It was March at the time, but it didn't feel like it. On the first day at the new school, we were snowed in ankle high, and we had a couple of big snowstorms even after that. Obviously, the weather was chilly, and to make things worse, I had caught cold, and the new school experience started with a dud. It took about 20 minutes to walk from home to school. We had just moved to a new house, so I was unfamiliar with the bus route and schedule. I opted to walk to school on the first day, and that meant I had to walk the hill by the Guri City Gymnasium. The hill wasn't that long of a walk, but the incline was exhaustingly steep. So imagine walking the hill on a windy day with the weather at a bone-chilling below zero, and that's exactly what I was facing on this day. On the way back home after school, I had to walk over the same hill and under the same condition. By the time I got to the highest point of the hill, I was so winded that I wanted to die. But at the same time, it was so cold that I had no choice but to keep moving. I still remember the freezing wind so vividly. It felt so cold to the skin that my cheeks felt as though they wanted to explode. When I cleared the hill, even my eyeballs felt cold and my entire body was stiff as if I was slowly freezing to death. I actually kept my eyes closed, squinting moment to moment to avoid bumping into things and continued walking as fast as I could. Then all of a sudden, I feel warm and so I open my eyes, curious to see where I was. I was standing at the entrance of an open market. It had a clear roof from end to end, and the entrance was also clear, with two large glass doors serving as entry and exit points for the customers. There were small shops at both sides of the market and was bustling with shoppers. Looking back, it was the strangest thing ever because anyone who lives in Guri knows that there are no buildings near the hill other than the gymnasium. You start seeing karaoke bars and pubs after going over the hill, but there is no shopping center anywhere nearby. Being new in the neighborhood, I didn't know this at the time, but the point is, the open market that I was standing inside in did not exist back then, and it does not exist today. So at the time, even though I couldn't explain how I got through the glass doors without even opening it, I didn't make such a big deal out of it. I had walked about halfway into the market when someone grabs my arms and drags me toward the direction I came in. My immediate reaction was to turn my head, and that's when I saw the elderly man. He looked to be in his 70s, was wearing an old worn-out jacket, and for some reason he had an angry look on his face. I wasn't so much scared, but really just taken aback, and my arm hurt a lot. The way he was pulling me, his strength was incredible for a man of his age. He cursed like a drunken sailor, but not at me, and more like at the situation. He said, "Shit, have you gone out of your mind? Why in the hell would you come here?" And so. I tried to resist, to free my arm from his grip, but it was absolutely futile. He was too strong. During the struggle, as I'm being dragged against my will, I bumped into another person by accident. It was the old man's fault, but I still felt as though I should apologize, so I turned my head to look behind me, and there was a man standing still. I remember exactly how he looked. His cheekbone was unnaturally protruding forward. He was so pale that it looked blue. He was wearing a black turtleneck sweater and a long coat in matching color. The creepiest thing though was the way he smirked at me, and as soon as we made eye contact, he began to chase after me. The elderly man seemed to get even angrier when the man gave chase, and he dragged me even faster toward the exit. As soon as we got to the exit, the elderly man kicked the door open and he basically dumped me out the door. He shouted at me saying, Don't ever come back here. I lost my consciousness after that, and when I woke up, I was at a hospital bed. Mom was in the room with me, and she looked elated to see me wake up. I was telling her about what happened to me when a nurse who was in the room with us interrupted me and said, "There's no market at the location you're talking about, and the place where you were picked up by the ambulance has only one building, which is the gymnasium. There is one thing though, not that it really matters, but there used to be an open market right about the place where you fainted. It closed down after a big fire accident, and the whole market had to be demolished. I don't know, but you may have dreamt about the place based on how you remember that as a child." The nurse went out after that, and I was left trying to puzzle together what she had told me. The problem was, I saw that place before I fainted, but let us suppose, for the sake of problem solving, that I did dream up that place. How would that have happened? I never saw that market before in my life. I'd never even once walked on that road before today. So how would I go about dreaming of a place that I had never seen? Based on what she said, I basically fainted right in front of the market that burned down years ago, but I could clearly remember the elderly man dumping me out the door. It was just too much of a coincidence. Mom and I spoke further about the incident, but she insisted that the nurse was right and told me to stop imagining the impossible. So I stopped talking to her about it, but I didn't give up trying to find out exactly what had happened to me. For the next couple of weeks after that, it took some effort on my part, but I was able to acquire some old pictures of the market. The first time I saw those pictures, my jaw dropped to the floor and I couldn't speak for a while. The photo showed the exact same market that I was in, and the shot from across the street showed I had fainted exactly at the spot where the glass door should have been had the market still been erect. It took me a long time to come up with this explanation, but I think I may have somehow entered a realm that's in between the dead and the living. The grandpa recognized right away that I didn't belong there, so he dragged me out of there. And the man in black, I believed the man to be a Grim Reaper. He wanted me in there. He wanted to take my soul, but the grandpa wouldn't let him. I think he saved my life. A year had passed after the market incident, and my life went back to being normal. This one night, I had a nightmare. It was so vivid and real that it felt like I actually lived it. In the dream, my family and I were traveling in a car, destination unknown. About a minute into the ride, we saw someone hitchhiking, and when we got closer, I could recognize the man. It was the grandpa. When my dad stopped the car, the grandpa dragged everyone out of the car and told us to walk to wherever the hell we were going. Dad, though, insisted on driving to our destination and got back in the car. Then the grandpa grabbed my hand and said, "No matter what happens today, your father should not drive under any circumstances." I woke up right after that and I was completely freaked out. I tried to stay awake to stop Dad from driving in the morning, but unfortunately I fell asleep. By the time I woke up, Dad was fumbling around to find the keys to his car. I tried to talk to him, but he kept telling me, later, I'll call you from work." As it turned out, he had woken up late and was about to be late for work. I barely managed to say a few words before he found the keys and was about to step out. But then I wasn't about to let him drive out, so I grabbed him by the arm and shouted at him that it was important. I tried to explain to him why he shouldn't drive today, but his mind was elsewhere, only thinking about getting to work on time. I followed him outside and continued to speak to him, but all I could do was to delay him leaving a minute or less. I was at school when someone came into the classroom and quietly said something to the teacher. I was then taken to the office where a counselor told me I had a call waiting and my mom was on the line. I picked up the phone and the first thing Mom told me was to stay calm no matter what she told me. She said that Dad got into a car accident and that he was severely injured. She told me to skip the rest of the classes and to come to the hospital, and so I did. Dad had to be hospitalized for 8 weeks, But before he was discharged and was feeling well enough to speak, he told me how the accident had happened. He said, I merged onto the highway and stuck to the left lane. At the point in time, I had no idea there was a truck well ahead of me that was carrying loads at overcapacity. Less than a minute on the highway, the cars in front of me were braking hard, like panic braking. I was in too much of a hurry, so I left very little distance between me and the cars ahead, and ended up hitting the car in front of mine at high speed. In no time, I had cars from the rear pretty much sandwich me between them and the cars at the front. By the end of it all, there was a huge pileup on all 4 lanes, and I was pinned inside my car, unable to get out. I was lucky though, because the cars trailing right behind the overloaded truck got the worst of it. They had loads weighing more than 100 kilos, basically catapulted them, and some of them died instantly from the impact. If you hadn't tried to stop me that morning, I could have been one of those people who got crushed to death. When I heard the story of the accident, I told both Mom and Dad about my dream and why I tried to stop him. Mom was no longer a non-believer. On the contrary, she kept asking questions after questions to try to figure out why the elderly man kept helping me. Then after about an hour into our conversation, she had a eureka moment. She said, when you were almost 4 years old, we were still living in Gapyeong, and there was an elderly man living next door to us. His wife had passed away, and his children never visited him, so he was always alone and seemed lonely. One time, you were playing outside, and I was hanging laundry in the yard. It was a different time. The town was very nice, and I could still see you through the door, so I let you play outside with the other children as long as you were playing in front of the house. I was hanging the damp clothes when I could hear you scream your lungs out, and the other children were running all over the place. I went outside as fast as my feet could take me, and I was horrified at the sight of what was unfolding right in front of my eyes. A stranger had grabbed you, and the elderly man next door was struggling to pry you away from him. I ran toward you, and that's when the man realized he was outmanned, and he ran away like a coward that he is. The elderly man grabbed you to prevent you from falling on the ground when the stranger let go of you. Thanks to that grandpa, you escaped an attempted kidnapping with nothing more than a few scratches. I thanked him profusely, and when your dad came home, we went to his house, gave him some gifts, and thanked him again. After that day, we would often invite him over dinner, and you had gotten very close to him in no time. He would sometimes just visit to play with you, and you loved his company. He was a wonderful person who was a huge part of your life for a year until he passed away. You were so sad when he was gone. For you, it was no different than losing your real grandpa, but then you grew up and forgot about him. Dad and I decided not to tell you about him because we thought we may just rub salt in an old wound. Even when you told me about the market incident, I still wasn't connecting the dots to the grandpa, but after what you told me about your latest dream, it just made sense that it's him. He's still protecting you even after death. After hearing Mom's explanation, I didn't feel scared. I wasn't creeped out. I just felt a sense of fondness and affection. I couldn't remember a thing about the grandpa from when I was 4, what we did together, how we used to play and all that. But it didn't matter. The bond had always been there subconsciously, and that's probably why I wasn't scared of him when he dragged me out of the market on that fateful day. Nothing bad happened to me after that, at least nothing so life-changing. But I live every day feeling loved and cherished, knowing that my Gramps is looking out for me wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. I wish I could see him at least one more time without anything bad happening. I want to tell him thank you, and that I love him too. It's strange that I miss someone who I can't even remember, but somehow I always miss him and long for his presence, even as a fully grown adult. By telling this story, I hope he'll somehow find out how I feel about him and how much I appreciate his care. I miss you, Gramps.
This is an experience I had when I was a senior in high school. That year, my uncle had been diagnosed with a terminal cancer and was hospitalized at Osaka Medical Center, but then was discharged short time thereafter because the doctors had declared there was nothing that they could have done for him. My uncle was divorced and was living with his girlfriend. She was a very cold person who only cared for herself. She was unemployed and broke, so my uncle took care of her financially. But when he got sick, she kept herself busy spending his money and didn't bother to take him to a hospital. By the time my uncle was too sick to move on his own, his house smelled like someone had died inside due to all the rotting food garbage she had left piled up in the kitchen. My uncle was a soft-hearted man, and tragically, he had truly loved his girlfriend. He put up with all her terrible behavior, and it still breaks my heart thinking about the condition she made him live in before the family finally intervened. My uncle kept his distance with all his families in the final years of his life, and that was why we learned of his condition too late. It was his way of protecting his girlfriend, and it landed him on the deathbed at the hospital. We got the terrible news when we took him to the hospital against his will. The doctor told us to prepare for the worst. We were all there by his side. My sister, my mother, my grandmother, cousins, his siblings, and his friends, and I. I was at the hospital for many hours when a friend of mine called me up from the hospital parking lot. She brought me a cup of coffee, and I spent maybe 20 minutes with her before coming back to my uncle's room and found everyone in tears. He had passed away. Strangely, every other members of our family were outside the room doing their own thing, like going to the bathroom, making calls to the families, and leaving the room to talk to the doctor when the uncle passed away. I was told that there was a 2 or 3 minute window when no one was present in the room with uncle. None of us were there to keep him company in his final moments. Then the day of uncle's funeral had arrived, so friends and family gathered to pay their respects. People were taking turns saying their final goodbyes. When my aunt, who has chronic back problems and is always hunched, straightens her back and stands straight up, but the way she was standing was strange. She looked like a marionette, as if both of her shoulders were held up by strings. We were all in shock because we all knew of her chronic condition, but it was nothing compared to what we were about to witness next. My aunt was now bleeding from her nose, and she began crawling on the floor on all fours. There were blood splatters all over the floor, and it was the most shocking thing I had ever witnessed. We all stood frozen still, and she couldn't even speak a word. My aunt then crawled to my grandmother and held onto her legs. She began to cry while saying, "Mom, I don't want to go. Mom, I want to live." I nearly pissed myself when I heard the voice, because it wasn't my aunt's. It sounded like the voice of a man who had been smoking for 1,000 years. My mom didn't want my sister to further witness this because she was pregnant, so she escorted her out of the room. Grandma, on the other hand, started crying uncontrollably, and Aunt continued to say, "Mom, I don't want to go. Mom, I want to live." My aunt's plea continued for some time until she passed out. When she woke up, she couldn't remember a thing. Everyone who was present at the funeral was traumatized by the event for the longest time. As hard as it was to believe, we all came to the same conclusion that Uncle had possessed her body. I suppose it is because of this happening that I just can't stop thinking about my uncle. I truly hope he's in a better place now.
In 2014, I had a major surgery. It was the first and the last time in my life that I had my stomach open. I had a few but very troubling experiences after the surgery. I'm not sure if it had something to do with the fact that I was so weak post-surgery, but nonetheless, I'll share one particular story that troubles me till this day. This story takes place in 2004, not long after I was discharged from the hospital and was told I could continue my regular daily routine before the surgery. I live in the town of Yuzawa in Niigata Prefecture. On this day, I was in Tokyo where I attended a seminar which took place in my company headquarters. The plan was to leave Tokyo as soon as the seminar ended, seeing as how I had to be at work in Niigata in the morning. But as fate would have it, I bumped into a few old co-workers there and ended up drinking with them for a few hours. By the time we said goodbye, I had already missed the last bus. I always took the bus to Tokyo, then back home, so I wasn't too familiar with the train schedule. But on this day, I had nothing to lose by checking it out. I went to the train station and, as luck would have it, they were still selling tickets to Niigata. I called mom before boarding the train and let her know I had missed the bus. She was a bit concerned, not because there's anything wrong with the train in particular, but because this wasn't the way I normally traveled. I told her not to worry and reminded her to not lock the door with a chain lock because I didn't want to wake her up like the last time. I was on the train, sitting by the window, and Misaki, my coworker, sat next to me in the aisle seat. I always preferred the window seats because as a kid, Mom and I would sometimes go to Tokyo to visit her sister, and it reminded me of those times. I'd always sit by the window and enjoy the ever-changing scenery outside. I guess you could say there was still a kid inside me. About an hour into the train ride, we stopped at Ueno Station and I had to transfer to another train. We had 10 minutes before the transfer train arrived, so I took the opportunity to take a quick smoke at the smoking area and also went to the restroom for a good measure. 10 minutes later, the train arrived on the dot, so Misaki and I boarded and sat window and aisle seats again like on the previous train. Misaki quickly fell asleep, but I couldn't for some reason and was looking outside the window out of boredom. It was dark outside, but bright inside the train carriage, so I was seeing reflections of the chairs and other things on the window. That's when I saw a man in his 40s standing right next to me and he was looking straight into me. He looked like a homeless man, like he hadn't taken a bath in ages, and his hair was a big mess of a thing. I really disliked the way he looked at me. I mean, he didn't break his stare for over 5 minutes. Even so, I didn't want to get into an argument with him, so I tried my best to ignore him while monitoring his movements in the reflection. 15, maybe 20 minutes had passed after that. I had my head down, but then looked at the window's reflection to check if the man was still staring at me. Thankfully, he was gone. I thought he probably moved away to get off at the next station. I could finally look toward the aisle without feeling uncomfortable, and sure enough, the man was no longer there. A few seconds later, I could see a train attendant passing by pushing a snack cart, and the sight of him sent chills down my spine. The attendant was moving right next to Misaki, which obviously makes sense because she's the one sitting in the aisle seat. The man in the reflection, on the other hand, was standing next to me, meaning I wasn't seeing the reflection of the man, but rather he was outside of the window. Simply put, the man was floating in the air, all the while matching the speed the train was traveling at. Come to think of it, if he was inside the train, he would have grabbed onto the handle or the chair to balance himself, but the man wasn't holding onto anything. I was so creeped out by him that I didn't even realize he was standing completely still inside a moving train. I was freaking out, so I woke Misaki up and told her what just happened. She was quite annoyed and told me to stop talking nonsense, then went back to sleep. It was well past midnight, but I couldn't fall asleep, not after what I had seen. I kept my eyes closed until we arrived at our stop, out of fear that the man would reappear. The train maintained a very comfortable temperature inside the cabin, but I was sweating bullets. My body was so tensed, like a wind-up toy that's been wound up to the max and waiting to go off at any moment. At the same time, I was shaking so bad, so it felt like my tense muscle was fighting against the force of the shake. By the time we had arrived at our stop, my body felt like I had just ran a marathon. It was around 4 a.m. when we got off at Niigata Station. I wanted to go home as soon as possible, so I took the taxi, and when we arrived at my house, I paid the fare and ran to the front door. I was unlocking the door when Mom opened it before I could, and her face was noticeably full of concern. I felt a sense of relief as soon as I saw Mom's face, and I started crying like a little lost girl who just found her mom. Mom comforted me for a short while until I could finally speak. I told her about what happened on the train, and when I was done talking, Mom held my hand and said she had something to tell me. This is what she said. I had a dream tonight. I dreamt about the homeless man I ran over back in the days when I used to drive to Tokyo to visit your aunt. It was an accident. I was driving on a 2-lane road on a late night, coming back home after spending the weekend with your aunt. A man jumped onto the lane I was driving on, and I had little time to react. I ended up hitting him, so I stopped the car and called for an ambulance, but unfortunately, he was pronounced dead at the scene of the accident. He was a homeless man, and at the time of the accident, he was intoxicated beyond the ability to even walk straight. He's been haunting my dreams ever since the accident, and that's the reason why I started seeing Dr. Sachiko going back 9 years. I thought it was all in my head. The police, your father, and pretty much everyone told me that the accident wasn't my fault. But the guilt of killing a man, it doesn't simply vanish because everyone tells you that you should forget and move on. I didn't tell you about this initially because you were only 13 at the time of the accident, and later on, when you were old enough, I didn't want this to affect you in any negative way. But tonight, I had a dream, and in that dream, I saw the man again, and this time, it wasn't me and him, it was you and him inside the train. He strangled you to death in my dream, and the scene was played out in a loop for hours until I woke up. It was the worst thing that I had ever seen, seeing my own daughter be murdered in front of my eyes over and over. I woke up from that nightmare only a minute or two before you were opening the door. So imagine the relief I felt when I saw your face. Tamiko, I don't want to scare you, but you need to know this. I don't think he's just a character in my dream. Mom and I talked until sunrise, but the conversation only gave rise to more questions. I wasn't sure what I had seen on that day until today. At least that's how I tried to reason with myself. I kept telling myself that I must have imagined them out of fear, that Mom's dream was only a coincidence, but in some corner of my mind, I guess you could say I feared that it was real. Tonight, when I was coming home from work, I saw a man standing outside of my bedroom window. I stood outside of the house, called the police, all the while keeping an eye on him. 5 minutes later, I was distracted only for a second or two when I saw the police lights flash in the corner of my eye. When I looked to my bedroom window again, the man was no longer there. I don't know what he wants from me, and I've got no clue what to do to get rid of him. The car accident wasn't my mom's fault. He jumped into oncoming traffic while intoxicated, so he's got no one to fault but himself for his demise. My mom had been seeing a shrink for the past 9 years because she was seeing him in her dreams. My life might as well be over if I had to see him in the physical realm for the rest of my life. How do I build a career with him in my life? How do I get married with him in my life? Even if someone marries me knowing the full detail of my baggage, I could never bring a new life into this world, knowing that he or she may one day be haunted by this evil spirit. Maybe this is what he wanted all along, to make my mom's life as miserable as possible. And if that's really what he wanted, sadly, he has succeeded. That is it for this video, and I would like to thank me for translating these stories. Appreciate me, kiss on the shoulder, mwah, mwah. Okay, so with that douchebaggery out of the way, allow me to thank you guys for helping me grow this channel to 2,000 subscribers. To be precise, it's 2,500, but really, the last 500 ballooned up so quick that I have very little time to thank you on time. So, growing a YouTube channel from ground up without the support of big-time YouTubers is extremely difficult. Before this channel, I used to run a gaming channel, and growing that channel to 7,000 subscribers was not an easy feat. One thing that is worth mentioning is that I've been immensely lucky to have some of the best subscribers on YouTube. With that said, some of you might be asking, what's the diff? A sub is a sub, so the more the merrier. But there is a difference. The vast majority of my subscribers are intellectually sound people who critique with manners, converse like normal human beings without the need to say kill yourself in every sentence, and most of all, they're good people. I can't thank you enough, and I can't say this enough, but truly, I thank you guys for all your support. It's a no-brainer that this channel wouldn't be close to where it is today without your continued support. There is also one more person I would like to thank, and that person is Celestial Nor. You must have heard him. He collaborated on this video and is a brand new member among the ranks of YouTube scary story narrators. He does some unique and interesting stories on his channel, and from the half a dozen videos I've watched so far, I believe his preference is to make videos that get to the point quick. So for those of you who prefer, for lack of a better word, sort of like bite-sized videos, I believe you'll enjoy his contents a lot. So I encourage you to check out his channel, and if you like his contents, then subscribe. If not, don't, that's fine too. But I do think his contents are worth checking out. I'll leave the link to his channel in the description. Also, I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to tell you guys why I make videos, and I feel that this is going to be quite a long speech. So feel free to stop the video now if you're not interested in what I have to say. Okay, so I spend a tremendous amount of time in making each of my videos, and I kid you not, I get gassed every time I complete a video. It has a lot to do with the fact that I have a full-time job and I'm not a full-time YouTuber. But nonetheless, I do take pride in that I always put in the time and effort to make quality videos. At least, that's my opinion. They are of quality. Back me up, guys. So, there are three types of joy that I take in making these videos. First, I love making videos. Second, I love receiving feedback from all of you. And third, I love watching the blue bar fill up and the like counts go up with subsequent views. I know it's cheesy and shallow, but I do. It makes skipping hangouts, nightly video game sessions, and other trivial leisurely things worthwhile. Look at it this way, when I finish a video, I don't even want to look at my computer for a day because I feel so drained. But the next day, as I see the like count go up, it's almost like my energy level goes up with that. To me, it's like receiving a pat on the back for a good job from you guys. And that feels good, well, to me. I don't do this for the money or the fame. I make more than enough to live comfortably, and I enjoy my job. Please, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to brag or anything like that. God knows I don't make enough to retire by next year. But to replace my current income with YouTube, I would probably have to gain, I don't know, 500,000, 1 million subscribers. But I don't have the kind of time to invest on this to gain that many subscribers. I tried doing YouTube full-time for about 9 months with my gaming channel. And I gotta say, the experience wasn't too enjoyable. So allow me to delve into that subject a bit deeper. Like all of you, I've always worked very hard after graduating from college, but one advantage that I had over my friends is that I never got married. I say advantage, but I only mean that financially, because I don't have children of my own for whom I need to provide, so naturally my savings account is a lot fatter than my friends. The advantage that I gain from that is the ability to change professions whenever I want. For example, I wasn't always a chef. Believe it or not, I used to be a system analyst before I became a chef. The pay was good, I liked the working environment, and I had a really cool boss. But one day after work, I think it was a Friday, I looked around the office and I just couldn't imagine myself doing this for the next 20 years. I had to do something else. So, as crazy as it was, I quit that job and I jumped on the first opportunity to work as a kitchen helper because cooking is also one of the things that I'm passionate about. The first year, I made 1/7 of my salary from my previous job. Then on the second year, I lucked out when the sous chef quit abruptly and they needed to replace him. And the sous chef, by the way, is basically the second in command in the kitchen, right below the executive chef. As I always had on any jobs that I worked, I busted my ass in the kitchen. And fortunately, the executive chef noticed that. Next thing you know, the executive chef put in a good word to the boss, and I ended up becoming his apprentice. This executive chef, by the way, is an amazingly talented chef. He is extremely tough to deal with because anything less than perfection is pretty much failure for him. But that's the reason why he makes such a great teacher. He was stern, but he was just as fair. You do good and he'll make sure that all credit goes to you, and if you do bad, then he's not shy to let you know about it. So, long story short, he ended up getting picked up by a hotel restaurant in Vegas, and his son executive chefs there. He makes a cool $250,000 there, so that should give you a little insight on how talented that man is. I, on the other hand, ended up becoming the executive chef of the restaurant he left, and I worked there for another year and a half before coming back to the East Coast back home. By the way, for anyone out there who has aspirations to become a chef, my case is an extremely lucky and well-timed case. In most cases, people never end up becoming an executive chef, and if they do, it takes an extremely long time to get to that point, or they end up becoming one in a small restaurant. I just happened to have worked at the right place, met the right people, and the timing was impeccable. So I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but don't take my case as an example or a goal of yours because chances are you'll be disappointed. So, anyways, it all happened in Chicago and I really enjoyed my stay there. But being away from family and friends for so long, it took a toll on me and I just had to come back home. When I came back, I wanted to try doing YouTube full time because making video content had always been a passion of mine as well. But I quickly learned how much it sucks to not have positive income. I mean, I could live off my savings fine for several years, but I hated that. I've always been the type of person who enjoys growth, whether that be financially, intellectually, spiritually, etc. Not having an income put a stop to all the growth in my life because I was always conscious of the decisions that I was making based on money. If I wanted to buy books, I had to think twice. If I wanted to take a trip, I had to tell myself not now. Hanging out with friends, shit, that costs money too. So the bottom line is, the full-time YouTube gig was destroying all aspects of my life. So I put a stop to that after about 8 or 9 months, and I was going to look for a job again when I got a call from my old boss and he told me about a restaurant his friend owns and he recommended me to them. The next day, I went in for an interview and I was accepted on the spot as an executive chef, and that's what I've been doing ever since. The thing is though, a part of me still missed making videos. I was still uploading on my old channel, but I barely did and my heart was not in it. So I told my subscribers that I'd be taking a long break because making content without being passionate for your work does disservice to you and to your subscribers. I basically needed a new start. I felt bad to my old subscribers, so I told them I was only doing creepypasta for fun as a side project, but it was the truth because I don't want YouTube to be my life. I don't want it to run my life. I just enjoy making videos and that's about it. The little that I make on this channel, I use that money to buy stock photographs, sound clips, and 3D assets that I can use to make content for my channel. At the end of the day, this is a hobby of mine, and it's probably going to stay that way until the day you guys get sick and tired of me. I will mention though, it's a serious hobby. I don't take lightly of my responsibility to make and publish quality content. That's the reason why I kept trying different types of videos because I wanted to see what you guys liked best. If you look at my old videos, some of them got thousands of views before I even hit 1,000 subscribers. So I quickly learned how to get many views, but that was my vision for this channel. My goal was to shape this channel based on your preference and my own to find a middle ground where I could make contents that I enjoy making and at the same time you could enjoy watching. And I know some of you might be making the counter argument that views equal what viewers want, but not really. To give you an example, one of my old videos hit like 3,000 views way back. But those views didn't translate to 3,000 subscribers, meaning it wasn't good enough to earn the subs, or they didn't like my other contents. At the same time, it felt like there was something missing. I was telling the story, but you guys were not involved in any shape or form. I wanted to change that, and that's why I started asking for your stories, and that kind of completed the picture. The stories that I was using to make my videos were not some random creepypasta, and they meant something to me because they were stories of my own subscribers. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it made the videos that much more special. Oh god. Let me wrap things up now. I've spoken way too long. I just want to tell you guys that I make videos because I'm passionate about making video contents. I love how my videos have made it possible for me to meet so many wonderful people, and I get to interact with you guys on a regular basis. I love the couple of bucks that I make on this channel because it's beautiful to me that this channel could someday be self-sustaining through your support, of course. The little that I make with my videos allows me to get the little things that could enhance my contents, and they make my videos more complete. The last couple of months, this channel has seen a major growth, and this because of you, all of you guys. I thank you for making this hobby of mine so meaningful. I thank you for making the time I spend on my content so worthwhile. And finally, I thank you for being such amazing friends. Until next time, everyone, stay safe out there.